Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here for the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook video on Tuesday the 4th of September. Quite a messy picture as we head towards the end of the week. A small area of low pressure brings great complications as it moves slowly around across Britain, eventually drifting away to take us back towards southwesterly winds, I suspect, as we go into next week, and it's all eyes on the tropics for developments then into mid-September. Now, if you're watching recent videos, you'll know how it was all looking pretty good for the first 10 days of September on the whole, and the general weather story is not too dissimilar, but we've been infiltrated basically by a small cut-off area of colder air at higher levels in the atmosphere. This is just running through over a few days through the later part of this week. It's this feature just to the north of us that's digging southwards. It becomes a little cut-off circulation. High pressure builds in around the north of that, but it's that feature that's now much more prominent in the forecast for the end of this week. And what that does is allow a little area of low pressure to develop at the surface. That will influence much of Britain as we head through the end of the week and into the weekend. Some cool air is trapped within that little circulation as well, so temperatures will be down below the average for the end of summer once again. Just to take that story on over a few days, then eventually that little cold pool gets drawn away, it weakens, higher pressure towards the southwest tries to build back in, and eventually we all go back into more of a southwesterly weather system, which the models do tend to understand a little bit better because it's not quite as complex once it goes back to a more direct westerly. Whether we can get higher pressure really building in or whether it stays more mixed next week is hard to just judge, and further ahead a lot will then depend on the tropics. Now, this is a chart from the National Hurricane Center in the States, and what's at the main interest is what is now Hurricane Florence over the mid-Atlantic. We've got Tropical Storm Gordon as well, which is heading towards the Gulf Coast. That will fade away, but Florence will take a long time to move across the Atlantic over many days, even into early next week, just journeying very slowly northwestwards. That's the forecast chart for Monday of next week. That's the 10th of September, and it shows Florence having moved slowly towards Bermuda. Now, what's critical then is the high pressure area which lies to the north of it, and if that builds strongly enough, it may well steer Florence towards the eastern seaboard of the States. If it doesn't, it can get picked up by the jet stream, and that tail end of a hurricane could eventually head towards our part of the world. As commonly happens at this time of year, we get autumnal wind and rain with some tropical enhancement in there as well. So that's one to watch. It may well be 2 weeks down the line before we really start to be influenced by it. Sometimes what can happen is that a zone of high pressure can get pushed ahead of the tail end of a hurricane, so we could well find a few days of dry and warm weather in the lead up to that, but then something more wet and windy as we go through beyond the middle of the month. All of that's a long way off in the grand scheme of things, and we've got low enough confidence in the short term before we start looking further ahead, but it's all just the possibilities that could happen in the next few weeks. Let's just quickly look at the short-term charts again then. This is for Wednesday. We've got fronts coming into the west of Scotland. That's bringing lowering cloud, rain and drizzle increasingly. That's spreading further inland across the Highlands as time goes on. What's left of a front across England and Wales should be breaking up. Some early low cloud for the Peak District and maybe East Wales should break with a decent day then for much of Wales, northern England, the south and east of Scotland. Those fronts that were affecting western Scotland through late Wednesday then start to slip southwards through into Thursday, a complicated process as it does so. Some areas of rain or showers may be fairly patchy, but at the risk of some showers breaking out a bit more widely through the day. Even this chart doesn't pick out much detail very well at all. Some areas could do pretty well for a good many hours, others could eventually turn into more frequent showery rain through Thursday and temperatures on the cool side. Now by Friday, a small area of low pressure is over the North Sea. High pressure is away toward the west and the north of Britain, but it's a real complex tangle of fronts then that evolves, and it looks as though the wettest conditions could well affect the east and northeast of Scotland, maybe some rain getting into the eastern Pennines, and all of that could just pivot slowly south and westwards across Scotland and northern England with time. A chilly day on many of the mountains. We've got some blustery winds around possibly as well. Into the weekend, all to play for in terms of detail. It depends exactly where that low centres itself and where any wraparounds of fronts are. In some places there's the risk of some persistent rain. It could just be areas of showers for others, and locally you may well escape dry for a good part of the day. Expect the forecast to change dramatically. We'll issue low confidence basically on what we can say on all the written files that go out on the Mountain Weather Information Service. That's the sensible approach to things, really. If you're looking for a guaranteed answer for the weekend, really you're struggling to get anything out of it just at this stage. Keep an eye on the latest forecasts. So we'll leave it there for today. Hopefully that's been useful for you. We'll update again before we get to the weekend just to see how things are evolving. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.